Well, welcome to the channel and thank you for joining me on this journey of the pop-up renovation of my 1990 Coleman Columbia pop-up. A little backstory of the pop-up: we got the pop-up off a family friend for around $400, and this is where it all started. We thought it was a great investment, which it really was. Structurally, there was nothing wrong. There was a few mouse holes in the canvas, but otherwise it was a perfect pop-up, just a little dirty. Needed a little TLC. So as you can see in this picture, really there was nothing major to it other than for the wheels were definitely rotted out. So they needed to be changed, and we did some work on this front step, which you'll probably see in the exterior video that I do with this pop-up. Inside, you can see the stereotypical 1990s laminate flooring going on there, and it's a little sight for sore eyes there. But we had the galley here, which the 2-burner stove worked, which we probably won't use inside. And then we had the sink, which unfortunately the sink faucet was broken. So eventually that will get replaced, but that's in a later video. The galley itself, they must have broke something and fixed it and put it back on, so it wasn't lined up properly. So it was real hard to get up and down. That will eventually be fixed in a later video also. But as you see here on the 2 seats, or the dinette seats that turn into the bed, there's some mouse marks from where they made a nest in between the canvas and those seats. And then this is just one of the bunk ends, and where my son has this smile on his face because this was his new fort. Here's the other bunk end on the other side, a little longer view of the galley, and you can also see here some more of the mouse damage on the left hand side, the top of the canvas and the screen. The plastic was fine. It was just the screen of the canvas. They built a nest, and none of the curtains or anything were damaged. One of the under storage units underneath the dining seats, which if you have a pop-up, you already know those are probably the best area for storage. We have 2 of them, one on each side. And here's the awesome tape deck that came with the pop-up that didn't work, and I'm pretty sure they tried to install this themselves because it didn't look like it was factory. Here's the inside of the left or the right hand cubby, where the electrical cord sits. You can see some debris in there from where the mice were getting in. This side was the worst because they kept their sleeping bags over here, so in between the sleeping bags there was definitely a few nests and some leftover food that they left us. Now on to the fun part. Now this was the disaster that happened behind the scenes that we had no clue about. We had bought the pop-up. It looked perfectly fine. The only thing I ever noticed was when I was popping it up, on the top of the canvas every single time, you get little dry flakes of wood that would fall down. First, I kind of thought maybe, if it's a mouse or something in there, maybe that's pieces of their nest or something, who knows. Well, turns out I went to investigate one day, and as you can see in these last 2 pictures, moisture had been getting into that camper. Now again, a little history behind the camper: it sat in the woods for 2 years uncovered before we even purchased it. There wasn't a lot of rust, but apparently the roof was leaking real bad. These sections, like you see here, I could push my thumb into these sections and the amount of water that came out of them was just ridiculous. So moving on to the next part, this is when the disaster struck. I'm kind of happy it didn't happen at the campground. This was a couple weeks before we were supposed to get ready. We were popping it up to take care of getting it ready to go to the campground, and lo and behold, the canvas on one side completely rips off, taking the bracket and all the wood and the wallpaper with it. The wood was so saturated that it just could no longer hold the support of the canvas. This side was a little worse. The styrofoam was so moist that actually we had an ant colony that had moved into this part, so I ended up having to cut it out. But not only that, this side also ripped off a part of the roof when it fell. But moving on to some of these brackets, the brackets weren't too bad. They were a little bit rusted, not all the way through, mostly just surface rust. So what I was able to do here was take them all out. Once I was working on the roof, use a wire brush on a drill, sand them all down, and paint them, which I'll take pictures of those later because I don't have any after pictures. This wall is the door wall. This wall had the worst amount of moisture on it than any of the other walls. Everything had to be replaced over here because the bracket where the canopy hooks up to had leaked for those whole entire 2 years. So this is the removal of everything. This was when we started digging into even more of the pop-up, and we realized there was more damage than we had initially thought. As you saw in all the first pictures, nothing really looked out of place. Nothing in the main forefront of everything had any issues. The problem was behind everything. Behind this electrical panel that you see now, and the door and the paneling behind the galley, there were at least a minimum of 12 mouse nests, bug nests, wasp nests. There was so much stuff back there that the paneling actually was decaying from the behind forward. Didn't realize this until I removed the galley, and that's when I realized that under or behind the galley, when I was taking things off, screws and bolts, and there were holes, just things that you don't see visually outside in the original inspection. Another thing that you'll notice in these pictures, and one of the things I'm most proud of that I absolutely love that I did, under each of the storage areas, so under the two bench areas and under where the galley goes, I actually peeled up the laminate, just cut it off from those sections, scraped it up, sanded the wood, and then I used a truck bed liner to seal the wood and seal those storage areas, because you're going to be storing things in there. One big thing I noticed was under the galley area, that what has happened, they would keep pots and pans there. Those pots and pans would scratch the floor, moisture would get into the wood because the laminate was exposed, and hence using the truck bed liner as a second barrier to stop and add a little bit of a structure to it, and it works great. So now we're going to start putting things back together. We are working from the ceiling down, and I wanted to do something different. I didn't want to do just the stereotypical pop-up where you buy the PVC board or the bathroom board and you put it all up there and you make it look like a pop-up again. I wanted to kind of almost make it like a portable cabin. So as you see here, I started using these pine boards. Now they're lightweight, they're already pre-sealed, and they were perfect for this job because they wouldn't add too much additional weight to the roof. They were very easy to cut, and they were long enough that I could use one piece from end to end instead of having to add seams to the roof and keep it so that everything looked uniform. Now, the only thing that I didn't take pictures of that you won't see in here is the structural integrity. This is the side where the styrofoam was missing, so I had to buy some high density styrofoam, cut out the whole end, and then I had to put structural 1x1s on each corner, and then along the roof, the whole span from front to back is a 1x1. It runs the whole length down the middle and down both ends front to back, so that I had somewhere to nail the wood into to give it support and structure. But not only that, I could disperse a little bit of the additional weight that this was going to add to those 4 posts where the pop-up actual rails are at. What you also notice in these pictures are these awesome 12-volt recessed lights that I put in. I love them. They just give it a whole different aesthetic. They make it look, like I said, this is kind of the final product of the roof. It makes it look more like a cabin than an actual pop-up. You feel like you're going camping in a cabin. Everything's waterproof, water resistant, and these 12-volt lights, all 4 of them can still run off the battery without having to drain your battery. Another big thing I highly recommend, especially if you have to get this involved into the renovation, make sure you measure as best you can to each point for each bracket that is on there. I had to remove every bracket, every mounting point, everything. So I made sure to make note of each point so that the end product looks just like this. This is after the brackets had been installed, reinstalled, and all the measurements were perfect so that the canopy wasn't too tight. The door can slide perfect and fit and hang just the way it did originally and lock into all its original sections. And the canopy didn't hang too loose. So moving on here, we're actually moving down into the actual pop-up work, where you can see all I did was spray paint with a stainless steel color high traffic spray paint, a silver on the front where the electrical panel is, and then these boards that I created the wall out of. Now this isn't one panel. These are each individual slats that I bought in the box. I think I only needed 3 boxes for this whole thing, so total maybe I think I spent $100. What's nice about this was instead of having to cut a panel to fit each angle in each cut, I could cut each board individually. Now these are again just like the roof. They're already pre-waterproof, they're pre-sealed, and for how lightweight and sturdy they are, or how lightweight and thin they are very, very sturdy and very, very structurally sound once they're all put together. Also, a nice thing with these was they were the right thickness. So if you've ever renovated or had to replace paneling in a pop-up, there's a little track that the paneling slides into at the top, and then there's a furring strip at the base that you nail to. These fit perfectly into that track so that, as you can see here in this picture, you can see better for the first seat that's there next closest to the galley, that they actually fit into the galley structure. You can mount them into that directly, and then all I did was add a furring strip to the bottom. So now here's just the complete look of this first stage. Now there will be two more stages before this is actually finished, and those will be in later videos, so I hope you join me in those. But as you can see here, and I know this is the worst picture I probably could have ever taken, but this project I started 2 weeks prior to us leaving to go on a camping trip. So this is 2 days before we were leaving to go on that camping trip, and I was buttoning everything up for the final time, and realized I never took any pictures just to admire my own work. I didn't do much to the galley other than I spray painted it, the top and bottom, top white, bottom gray. And to be honest with you, for this trip, I don't even know why I put it back in, because we never used it. I think mostly I was thinking just storage or something, but who really knows? I put it in there. The floor, I actually went with the same thing. It's a peel and stick laminate flooring. Really like this because it's more of like a concrete or a stone look. I figured I have wood on the ceiling, I have wood on the sides. I, didn't want to continue the wood on the floor. I wanted something better to, something different that'll contrast better with the wood, still give you that cabin feel, but not be wood, and more wood. So what I liked about this is it, peel and stick, fit in there perfectly, didn't have to, it was inexpensive, and it looked really nice. It kind of pulled everything together, keeping the ceiling light and the floor dark, kind of brings your eye up, so it makes the pop-up actually feel taller than it actually is. One thing I highly recommend that I don't see in a lot of these remodel videos when they're doing the floor, add an extra layer of glue. So on this floor, what you don't see and what you didn't get to see in the video is I actually used contact cement also with this flooring. I know the flooring is peel and stick and will stick on its own, but I thought it best to add that extra layer just in case moisture gets around any of the edges or anything like that. That way you don't run into the issue of them peeling up. It just gave that extra layer of protection to keep that, down to the floor properly. Also, what you'll notice is right when you walk in the door, which is here, so that little wall that you see to the left hand side is actually the light switches now for the roof and for the outside lights. I'll get more into these into another video and go over how I installed them and how I ran the wiring and everything. But the nice thing about this is the two-way switches that I used here actually are wired so that they illuminate when the lights are off. That way at night when the lights are off, it works as a great night light, especially when you have a kid like us who might need to get up to go to the bathroom, or yourself. They work as a great night light right towards the door while everything else is off, but it also gives you the convenience when you're getting into the trailer so you don't have to search for the switch on the ceiling, especially if it's dark. Now you still have the storage. You can see here, like I said, this is 2 days before we're leaving, so I'm literally packing things in as I'm trying to finish up new finish work around the video. So I want to thank you for joining me, and I really hope you liked my narrative to my I won't call it a video, it's more like a video slideshow with narration. But please like and subscribe and hit that bell button if you want to follow along with the rest of this project. There are still 2 more phases of this project that I have to complete, and then I hope to bring you along on a video of the completion of the outside, doing the painting, resealing the roof, and other projects that I will be taking care of with this pop-up. So once again, I want to thank you for joining me, and please just keep being you like I will just be me.